I'm 33 and have two kids, 12 and 8. I divorced their dad when I discovered he was cheating on me with a mom from our younger son's school group. Despite that betrayal, I agreed to shared custody because I wanted my kids to grow up with their father in their lives. However, since the divorce, he's only been around when he's picking them up for visits. He often goes out with his stepchildren but rarely includes our kids, claiming those outings are spur of the moment and can't always include them. Eventually, I stopped pushing, but I've always thought it was unfair that he keeps his distance from our children's lives. Recently, I decided to upgrade my older son's computer, and he asked if we could give his old one to his cousin, my brother's son. My brother has been a huge support for my kids. He's always available to take them to their school events when I can't and often takes them out to the park or for trips when I'm busy. My ex, on the other hand, is rarely available for them. Anytime I ask him to help with an activity, he has an excuse: he's out of town or swamped with work. Ironically, though, whenever his stepkids need something, he's there. Once, he even argued with the stepkid's father at a school event, insisting he had the right to be there. When my ex found out I gave the computer to my nephew, he got upset. He complained that if I had money to spare on a gift like that, I should have forgiven 2 months of child support he'd missed, since his finances were tight with a new baby. He added that if I could give away a computer, I should have gifted it to either his kids or his stepkids, who shared just one computer among the three of them. I told him my finances were none of his business and that I owed nothing to his stepchildren. Then his wife jumped into the conversation, accusing me of spoiling my son by giving him a new computer and of being petty for letting my son bring it to their house, claiming it was just to show off in front of his step-siblings. I told her she had no right to speak to me that way or question my decisions. I added that I allow my kids to see their father so they can grow up with him in their lives, not so she can interfere with how I parent. My ex was offended, but I told him this whole situation could have been avoided if his wife hadn't inserted herself where she doesn't belong. After that, things seemed to calm down until last week. I went to pick up the kids, and my ex was visibly upset. He explained that he tried reading a bedtime story to our youngest. At home, he still likes to be read to before bed, usually by me, his brother, or my brother, and when none of us are around, he listens to audiobooks. Apparently, my ex wanted to make an effort to connect, so he offered to read to him, but our son turned him down, saying he didn't need him for that because he could do it himself. My ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 8-year-olds without a dad on his tablet, and it hit him hard. The next day, my ex offered to take our older son to basketball practice, but he replied that he'd be going with his dad. He quickly corrected himself and said uncle. That made my ex even angrier, and when I came to pick up the kids, he confronted me about it. I told him that if our kids feel like they don't have a father, he is only himself to blame. He tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was the one pushing him away from his role. I told him it's up to him to show up for his kids, not something I can do for him. I reminded him he was the one who broke our family, and he's chosen to be more involved with his stepkids than with his own children. I told him not to kid himself. The kids are growing up, and they're starting to see the reality of who he is as a father. If he keeps this up, he can't expect much from them in the future. After that exchange, his mom called me. While she's always been polite to me, I felt the need to say that I would have appreciated the same concern from her when she supported her son's affair, knowing her grandchildren were losing their father in the process. She hung up, and we haven't spoken since. My brother advised me that I had every right to express how I feel, but he suggested that maybe this discussion shouldn't have happened in front of the kids. Later, my ex texted me saying that if I weren't so difficult, he'd spend more time with them. I told him his duty as a father doesn't depend on whether I'm easy or not, and he knows I've never prevented him from seeing the kids. The truth is, when he has to choose, he prefers outings with his stepkids over his own children, and that's something only he can change. The agreement was to split the time 50-50 with the new baby. Now, he says he doesn't have space for both kids and only picks them up on weekends. When they're at his place, he doesn't take them anywhere. The weekend goes by, and he goes out with his stepchildren and his wife. Even when they used to stay with him half the week, it was the same story. The current agreement is that he can have them whenever he wants. To make it clearer, if they want to have breakfast with me on Monday and dinner with him, that's valid. Here's the thing, now that the agreement is like this, he sees them less than when he was supposed to have them half the time. Update 1. My ex sent me messages saying he wanted to resolve things, stop arguing, and talk to me. I agreed. He came to my house, and we didn't beat around the bush, we went straight to the point. He asked me if I really thought he was a bad father. I replied that, looking back now, I never would have chosen him to be the father of my children. He said it wasn't easy for him, and I answered that it wasn't easy for me either because I take on both his role and mine. He told me he couldn't leave his stepchildren without a father because he had already broken their family, and I replied that he had left his own children without a father. He started crying and told me it was my fault, saying that when the infidelity happened, I refused to forgive him or go to couples therapy. I kept telling him things I'll admit they weren't kind, but none of them were lies. He asked me if, given his current state, I didn't feel sorry for him, and I said no. He told me he didn't think I could be so cruel, and I replied that when I changed jobs, pulled my kids out of school 2 months before the end of the term, moved houses, and watched him disappoint our kids over and over again, any empathy I might have felt turned into apathy. He left after that. His mother called me and said she knew what I had told her son, that he hadn't stopped crying, and that she didn't understand how I could carry so much hatred to hurt her son like that. She said I should just get over it. I answered, with all due respect, what I said wasn't out of hatred but out of truth. If your son is crying, it's because he's finally facing the consequences of his actions. Maybe instead of worrying about how he feels now, you should have taught him to take responsibility and treat people with respect. She said I didn't know what it was like to feel a mother's love and see a child suffer, and I replied that I did understand because I have 2 children who cry over a living father. 2 children who see their dad being a father to other kids when he doesn't have time to be their father. She said he was sorry, and I told her not to put words in his mouth and to stop calling me about anything related to her son. I hung up. I wanted to cry so badly, but I'm a damned mother, and I don't have time for that. I want my kids to feel safe, loved, and strong enough not to need anyone, not even me, to be themselves. Last Thursday, I took my kids to their cousin's birthday party, hosted by my ex-sister-in-law. I still have a good relationship with her. She was the one who told me about the infidelity and that her mother was already encouraging it. My ex showed up alone and irritated. My kids kept their distance from him. They kissed his hand but then ignored him completely. My ex-mother-in-law told the kids they should show more respect to their father, and my eldest replied that he doesn't show respect for me since he and his partner talk badly about me. I scolded my son, not for what he said but for how he addressed his grandmother. I told him it was wrong to eavesdrop on private conversations and repeat them. Then I asked him to gather his things because we were leaving. My ex-mother-in-law asked me not to leave, saying the kids were having fun and we could resolve this as adults. She asked my ex what he had said, and he claimed not to remember. I told her I didn't care, and she said we should be good parents. I replied that to be good parents, you need to be good people first. My ex was getting agitated. My ex-mother-in-law asked why we couldn't have a civilized co-parenting relationship. I told her everything I've mentioned here about his free will to see the kids and how the second custody agreement isn't working since he only sees them some weekends. My ex didn't want to discuss it, saying he had too many kids at home. My ex-mother-in-law told him the only kids who should feel comfortable are his, and the comfort of the others should be provided by their biological father. My ex wanted to end the conversation because his mother was scolding him for being a careless father. He also said it was my fault. I asked him to clarify how it was my fault. You can see the kids whenever you want, what more do you want? He started yelling, claiming I was only being petty because I didn't really need the money since I earned more than him and had fewer kids to feed. I told him I wouldn't continue the conversation and that I'd show him what being uncivilized looks like by filing for the overdue child support payments. His mother asked what I meant by overdue payments. I explained that he was 3 months behind. She was furious, slapped him, and demanded to know what he had done with the money for his children. He answered, I couldn't let Junior miss out on attending the same school as my son. I didn't want him to feel inferior. My ex-mother-in-law said she couldn't believe it, and they started arguing. I left. Yesterday, my ex-mother-in-law came over and said she would pay the overdue fees. She brought the money in cash. I knew my ex would be furious. Here's some context. My ex-mother-in-law doesn't work, doesn't own anything herself, and lives with my ex-sister-in-law. However, she does have significant savings from her inheritance. If she pays the tuition, my ex knows there won't be much left for him when she passes, even though she's still healthy. He's been asking her for years to invest some of that money in his business ideas, but she's always refused. My ex's retaliation was not picking up the kids this weekend. Yesterday, my ex-sister-in-law called me. She doesn't know all the details yet, but apparently, my ex's 15-year-old stepson punched him in the mouth. She said she'll let me know exactly what happened once she finds out. And before anyone asks, the new custody agreement will likely take a year to finalize. The court says the overdue payments are the priority, and the rest can wait. We have more urgent cases. She knew about the affair. When I say she wasn't rude to me, it's because she never showed displeasure towards me or was a bad mother-in-law. I was surprised that she was a cover for her son. During the divorce, she didn't take sides and has always been a good grandmother. Update 2. A promise is a promise. As I mentioned earlier, my ex's stepson had an altercation with him because my ex refused to let him go out. Now I have more details. My ex's stepson had plans to go bowling with some friends. His biological father had already given him permission and money for the outing. However, when he told his mother, she said he couldn't go because they needed him to stay home and watch his younger siblings. My ex and his wife had planned an outing and needed someone to stay with the kids. This led to an argument. The boy raised his voice to his mother, and my ex stepped in to demand that he respect her. The boy replied that he wasn't his father. Trying to maintain authority, my ex told him that as long as he lived under his roof, he had to follow his rules. The boy ignored him and turned away. My ex followed him and touched his shoulder to get his attention. At that moment, the boy turned around, punched him, and shouted that he wasn't his father and could never compare to him. The mother scolded him for his behavior, but the boy, still angry, shouted back that he hated her. This version was shared by my ex and his wife to my ex-mother-in-law. My sister-in-law later relayed it to me. They went to see my ex-mother-in-law to try to gain her sympathy and convince her to take care of the kids, the 2 stepchildren and the baby, so they could go out. However, my ex-mother-in-law told them she would not take care of the children. When I spoke to my ex, he mentioned he was dealing with family issues and claimed that the boy's biological father was turning him against him. He didn't give me many details and omitted most of what my sister-in-law had shared. He simply informed me that, due to the situation, he wouldn't be able to pick up our children this weekend. The 15-year-old boy is now staying with his biological father. As for what I mentioned earlier, my ex was 2 months behind on child support, and that same week, he was supposed to make another payment. He didn't, leaving him 3 months behind. In the end, his mother was the one who covered the overdue amount. Regarding the child who attends the same school as my son, it's not the 15-year-old involved in the altercation. It's his younger stepbrother, who is 8 years old, the same age as my son. I decided to enroll my son in that school when the affair became public. At the time, I was working as a kindergarten teacher at the same school, and the boy had been one of my students. We all knew each other, and to protect my children from rumors, I transferred them to a private school. This happened 2 months before the school year ended. Thanks to the circumstances and the support of some kind people, we managed to get them admitted. Commenter: the thing I don't understand is that X complains that you have more money. But now you're a kindergarten teacher, rewarding but not well paying. Certainly not well paying enough to put a kid in private school. Oop, when the infidelity occurred, I was an elementary school teacher and was pursuing a master's degree. Now, I am a secondary school teacher and work in a government institution. My salary is now 4 times higher than it was before the divorce. I worked at a public school because I wanted to be close to my children in case something happened. As I mentioned before, my son is still in a private school, but his father pays the tuition so that his stepson can attend there. Commenter: I wonder if he knows that his mother gave you money for his children. He's lucky that you're not an asshole because, legally, he is still behind in child support, especially if she didn't pay it the way the court ordered. I don't believe that courts ever suggest cash payments. Oop, he knows that, that's why he didn't pick up the kids last week. Even my ex-sister-in-law doubts that things happen this way. At first, her wife was crying when her mother said she wouldn't take care of the kids, but the crying stopped, and then the justification started. I know the guy, and I never saw him in violent behavior. Update 3. The discussion was about how I could afford private school tuition on a kindergarten teacher's salary. To clarify, I am no longer a kindergarten teacher, I am a high school teacher, and salaries in education vary significantly depending on the country. In my country, salaries in education are quite competitive compared to other jobs. To clear up any further assumptions, micro businesses, $280, small businesses, $315, medium-sized businesses, $350, large businesses, $370. My field, education, early education, kindergarten, $800, $1,000, primary education, $900, $1,100, secondary education, $1,100, $1,300, secondary education with 5 years of experience, $1,300, $1,400, associate professor, master's degree, $1,050, $1,400, full professor, doctorate, $1,400, $1,750. The cost of living here is affordable, and I mentioned that in several comments. I am not from the United States, where life is more expensive. In my country, this salary is more than enough to live comfortably. I am not rich, but my kids enjoy an excellent quality of life. Private school tuition varies. There are schools as low as $120 per month or less, and of course, there are elite schools that are much more expensive. We use local currency, not dollars. I also have other sources of income that are irrelevant here. Now, to stop the speculation, people assumed I was from multiple countries, calculated my monthly tuition costs, and even tallied up all my expenses. The only thing you missed was calculating the cost of my divorce. Let me save you some trouble. I didn't pay a single cent, and my ex left with nothing but the clothes on his back. Careful not to choke on that. As for my kids not being well cared for, my kids are perfectly fine, and as long as I'm breathing, no one will take that away from them. I saw a lot of concern for my children, but here's a question for you. What about your kids? Are they okay? Did you pay what you owe for their care? When was the last time you saw them? There's no need to worry about my kids. If any of those users want more details, feel free to contact me, and I'll happily send over some bills for you to pay. Why, since you're so interested in my finances and expenses. And regarding my divorce, it was far from amicable, not because of custody that was never an issue, but because my ex lied at every turn to delay and obstruct the process. I didn't accept it then, I don't accept it now, and I never will, not in a million years. For those still questioning my divorce, here are my words to you: once there's infidelity, there's no family left. This clarification isn't for those who offered helpful comments or advice on my post. End of the informational break. Now, the actual update. The day after my post here, my ex was arrested for domestic violence and child abuse. The father of the boy involved filed a complaint. My ex's wife defended him, claiming that her son was a brat and that this wasn't the first time her son had been violent with him or his younger siblings. This left me surprised because, as far as I know, my ex had never mentioned that the teenager had been beaten. My ex-sister-in-law said that her brother, meaning my ex, never brought it up. I asked my kids if their stepbrother had ever touched them or been violent with them. Both said no. My children are comfortable telling me anything, and their answer was no. My ex and his wife have since changed their story about the incident. Now, their version is that the boy misbehaved, my ex tried to talk to him, and the boy hit him first, so the mother hit her son to pull him off my ex. Child protection authorities here are usually very strict when a case interests them or when the harm suffered by the child is severe. I haven't seen the teenager myself. The teenager has been placed in a shelter for abused youth. Edit: when physical abuse of minors is reported, they are transferred to a safe space until a gazelle chamber interview and a forensic medical evaluation are conducted. Once a safe environment is confirmed, they are returned to the parent. Update 4. It was determined that the 15-year-old boy was indeed assaulted. I don't have all the details about what was said during his interview since, being a minor, that information is protected. From what I understand, my ex-mother-in-law hired a lawyer, and with the mother's statement, my ex was cleared of the violence charges. However, the boy insists on a different version of what happened. In the middle of all this, my ex had an altercation with a police officer when they were separating him from the boy's father, which led to his arrest for a week. In the end, there were no charges for violence or child abuse. On the other hand, the boy's mother is still on maternity leave, and from what I've heard, she was referred to parenting and anger management courses. The boy's father can't take care of him full-time, and the boy said he would go back to his mother if my ex left the house. Apparently, that didn't happen, so the boy is currently staying with his paternal grandmother. That's all I know for now. My eldest son knows what happened, but it wasn't through me. I want to clarify that because people tend to assume a lot here. I don't think I'll update again unless this directly involves my kids, and honestly, I hope it doesn't come to that. For now, my kids' visits to my ex are suspended. While I respect the court's decision, I still have my doubts about how the situation was handled, and I'm shocked at how justice worked in this case. I don't want to speculate, but there are rumors that my ex-mother-in-law paid a lot of money. I can't confirm that, though. Wishing you all happy holidays. Now on to second story. Dad, once my hero, cheated and hurt my mom. Now we see him as dead, but he pretends we're family. I, 17 male, am the oldest child of my family. My father, 44 male, my mother, 43F, and my little sister, 15F. Throughout my life I always loved my father and idolized him to the point of making him proud, being my whole life purpose. In 2019 he had to immigrate to Europe to prepare our lives there and be away from our home land forever. In 2022 we finally reunited with him, and from there I thought it was the end of our struggling. But then after just 2 years he started acting funny. He got a job as a hotel driver, and from there he changed completely. He stopped hanging out with me and my sister. He started coming late and then just eat and sleep. We felt so distant, like he was trying to stay away from the house. My mother was the first to notice this, and slowly their relationship began to break down. One day I had a beach hangout with the school, but when I was preparing I heard shouting and it was my parents fighting. Apparently, my father cheated on my mom with a single mom with 2 kids, 13M, 6F, from Morocco since last January, and this whole time he was spending time with this woman. Then my father out of wrath grabbed my mother's arm so hard that it wounded badly, blocking blood flow, and it got to the point where she picked up a knife and said, "If you don't get out of my fucking house, I will kill you," and so he did. It was a hard thing to process, and after this event 2 months later he was slowly drifting away from our family responsibilities, like paying the bills, school, etc., and it became obvious he no longer loves us. The annoying part is that he claims he still loves me and my sister and he will be always with us. We are not dumb enough to believe, because if he actually did then he would at least participate in our responsibilities. I felt so lied to, so manipulated. I idolized this man, I saw him as my ultimate guider on how to win in life. And now he is nothing but a lustful man who will go for any woman who isn't my mother. Thankfully we are in a much better state. Especially my mother. We accepted that he is gone as dead, even began claiming that my father is pure dead if somebody asked. However, from time to time he still tries to contact me and my sister, and I don't know what to do. I also want to mention that my mother can easily file an order against him for our assault using the photo she took of the wound he gave her, and also some threats in their old chats. But because all of us are devout Christians, my mother had mercy on him and refused to press any charges. They are still not officially divorced and I don't know what to do about it. I should probably tell my mom the same thing, but from a logical perspective, he isn't living with us, and he has no information on us nor the house. He has the keys to the house, sure, but nonetheless, he wasn't any harm after this incident. This incident happened in June of 2024. The house isn't owned by us, it's rented by my father's friend whom we pay him a monthly amount. We all live in Spain, but my parents were married in the homeland, Egypt, so their marriage is only recognized on paper then can be undone by the divorce. However, in one of your scenarios, if my mother was hospitalized or even dead, without the divorce, me and my sister would legally be forced to live with him as he still holds custody. Right now we aren't financially ready to fill the divorce, nor we know how it works in Spain. But my mother thankfully considering the divorce when the time comes, but sadly not considering filling a police report, and I don't know why. Update 1. Well, sadly this isn't a positive update. Turned out my father wasn't paying my sister's school bills since last month, and all this time the school kept my sister out of pity. But now it's getting very serious. It's been proven over and over again that he isn't involved in our lives and needs. The logical conclusion would be that we file a report against him for child negligence. However, because we are so financially stuck to the point where it's sickening. I try my best to stay strong for both of them, but I don't know how much I can take it. To add insult to injury, he gets offended when I disrespected him and ghosted me for disrespecting your father. At this point I want to chalk him to death. I don't know how we can stand on our feet and or dare to file for divorce and make him pay. I am sorry that the update wasn't positive, but I promise to let you guys know if anything finally got together. Also, thanks to everyone who advised on the consideration of divorce. My mother finally agreed to it, but sadly we can't go as far as reporting him to the police for the assault back in June, as the case will likely drop, and like said, we don't have the money. Again, thanks to everyone who was concerned, and I promise for any update in the future. I don't know how the system works in Spain, but especially since your sister is under 18, he should be obligated to pay to support his children. We are so financially stuck, let alone the fact that she is busy looking for a job since she became unemployed because of him. She considered the divorce, though just not the timing, because my parents got married in Egypt. In Egyptian law there isn't something called a child support. The father can fight for custody, but he isn't obligated to pat anything. The Spanish government only recognized my parents' marriage, but they can't judge them based on their laws due to them still being immigrants.